In my well,
And then
not
that's
to
your idea.
not
That's
to
what,
not to cause libel or anything, but in my opinion, Jerry Springer Show has not shed a fair light on the transgender community.
Right, right. It's funny. I don't know if it was that particular show, but I did happen to see I believe it was Jerry Springer.
And he's not. To be fair, he's not alone in this.
Right. No, I know. But,
He's just the icon.
But it was funny. It was the funniest thing because I was at the time I had gone over to Midas. I think it was Midas or one of the muffler. I was getting a muffler put on my car, and I'm sitting in the waiting room. Here I am. I'm sitting in the waiting room with all these people, and they're all watching this TV. They have a TV there for people's entertainment while they wait for their mufflers. And it was Jerry Springer, and Jerry Springer had this transsexual person on, and I'm sitting there going, oh.
this
This
can
is
only go
interesting.
well.
And they're all glued to the set, and I'm thinking,
Well, you can look at it
cool.
this way. Compared to the image that was on the TV, you're going to exceed their expectations.
Yeah.
Or if they don't pick you out, you can go, trannies are freaks.
It was just amusing, though, to be sitting there watching these people watch this. And it's like, oh, God, please don't say anything really stupid, because I'll have to challenge you. Anyway.
When we get into the media portion of the class and we start looking at all the different media examples that are out there for masculinity and femininity in the gay community and the trans community, that's one topic that always comes up is bad exposure better than no exposure at all? Or is silence better than kind of the distorted reality TV version that you get?
Sure. And what is the conclusion?
I don't know if we have a conclusion.
She said it was a discussion.
I know.
Well, no, and certainly the point's been made in a couple of times in a couple of interviews that I've seen, talking about gay characters and talking about some of the more modern TV shows that, and I think you're starting to see probably trans characters go this road as well on TV. But at least when gay characters hit the small screen, they were generally portrayed in supporting roles, sort of comic relief roles.
Sure.
And while that was still sort of damaging to the image, sort of demeaning to people, it did get their foot in the door and allow other shows later to actually create more positive images.
Yeah.
So is any exposure better than no exposure?
I guess it depends on whether your any exposure is the talk shows who will go unnamed.
Well, yeah,
or maybe some of the more legitimate.
Certainly, I think the venue has to be considered, because when you're talking about breaking into mainstream Hollywood, yeah, it probably is. It probably is worth the bad imagery to get your foot in the door. Otherwise, nobody would think about a gay character.
There have been several trans characters on reality shows lately, on some of the more famous reality shows. I can say names, right?
Sure.
Yeah, there was I believe it was male to female, a woman on The Real World, and there was another contestant on America's Next Top Model last season.
Yep. There was one on The Surreal Life too.
I missed that one.
Wow.
There were big issues with apparently her roommate didn't like her leaving her breast forms around. But
Okay.
now there have been a number of characters, whether they've been portrayed by trans people or not, that have been real positive. One of the ones that I know you'll be familiar with, harkening back a little ways, was Ally McBeal.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I admit I used to watch Ally McBeal.
One of the guys
religiously.
fell in love with I believe a post-operative transsexual, and he took flack for that.
Yeah.
And that goes back a little ways.
There were two on that show.
There were two.
There
There
were
was
two.
another one.
There was
where-
one that was killed,
Right.
and then there was the one that one of the lawyers was dating. Yeah, that was
And to reference another show that I know you're familiar with, there was an episode.
What am I like
No,
ancient here?
No, this isn't old. It's just I know you.
I know.
I know your feelings about Mark Harmon.
Okay, yes, I like Mark Harmon.
So there was an early episode of NCIS where they were dealing
I saw that one.
with a person who, in order to escape being found, had changed their sex,
Yes, and
changed their gender.
and she spoiled it for all of us.
My students have mentioned this episode. I've never seen it before. They always come up with examples that I've never heard of.
It gets referenced later in the series as well, but apparently there was a lot of flack from community groups at that episode because they continued to refer to her as he throughout the show. She was negatively portrayed in many instances, outside of her being the villain of the piece.
And Drop Dead Gorgeous.
Yeah, well,
I remember that.
The following season, they did an episode of a preoperative transgender soldier, a sailor, who ended up shooting himself and shooting herself. And the characters, you could tell it was sort of in response to public outcry because the characters sort of all had different reactions to this dead sailor than the one they were tracking the previous season, although they did hearken back to it.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's been a lot of, especially on these crime dramas where you sort of introduce new ancillary characters every week to explain the plot. Sure. There have been a number of on CSI or on Law and Order. There have been trans characters, and what we've fortunately been able to see recently are actual trans actresses and trans actors portraying non-trans characters.
Naturally.
Yeah, interesting. It's kind of cool. And you're certainly in your class, you talk about this kind of stuff quite a lot.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about kind of the different media examples that are out there, and there's all sorts of theories that discuss, how people viewing these characters will see. So is seeing that the very stereotypical gay character is kind of always the one that they reference when they do these studies. And
Jack.
Exactly, it's always the Jack. Does watching so many Jacks make you believe more of those myths about what your stereotypical gay man is like? And they really kind of go back and forth. Some people say, a stereotypical image is a harmful image, and some people say a stereotypical image is better than no image.
Right.
So it kind of goes back and forth.
And to some degree, it's one of those lines that you want to tread, but a lot of times stereotypes start for a reason.
Sure.
There's some grain of truth to it. And certainly there are gay men out there that fit the Jack stereotype. The important point that I've heard people make is it's not the only stereotype for a gay man. It's not the only image of a gay man.
Yeah, that's the important part, is not taking that assumption and then applying it to
Broadly,
everyone who does or does not meet that stereotype.
Right.
But
And Jack, this was a Will and Grace?
yes.
Jack
reference?
was Will and Grace.
See, I never watched that show. I'm sort of familiar with it, but I never watched it.
I watched it.
But,
That was a
pretty fun.
good show.
but I kind of guessed that's what it was.
And I raised that one because I know I've heard people talk about the Will and Grace show with that same question. Was the Will and Grace show a overall positive image for gay characters or a negative image for gay characters? Because the Will character was a very strong, independent, positive gay metrosexual male, and the Jack character was your stereotype, flamboyant, over the top, melodramatic diva. And so when you have both those images in the show, are they showing diversity, or are people walking away with Jack in mind?
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I never watched it.
You need to go back and watch some episodes.
Yeah, I suppose. I see.
I'm pretty sure it's syndicated now. So.
Yeah.
But-
Someday, if I find time, I'll review some of this stuff. But when I get TV.
Hulu.
Oh.
When you get internet, you can watch TV.
Oh.
Hulu's TV Online. It's wonderful. It's free TV Online, actually.
Wow.
I guess that was my little spot for Hulu.
See, I'm.
Now we just have to have a little alien pop out of the stomach and wave.
Yeah.
They
see,
do that in their
ads.
commercials.
Hulu is how the aliens are going to take over the planet by turning all of our brains into mush. Not only are they